This is the Beyond the Dojo podcast. I'm Lauren.
I'm Jeremiah.
And we have a host of guests with us today. As you can see if you're watching the video, we have Sean that traveled up with us from Florida to the HDKI. Is this considered the fall camp for you guys?
Fall camp.
Fall camp.
Fallen from grace.
Fallen from grace. Okay, well that's one way of putting it. And then we have Scott Langley, of course. And then David Pope as well. So we're super happy to have you guys on the podcast. Hopefully the sound is picking all of us up here. We're a little squished into this table.
Just want to say thank you for the weekend and the wonderful seminar and teaching. It really is, it's a nice escape when you don't have responsibilities. All you do is just enjoy what you started life out as in karate, right? Yeah. So not for y'all, but for us.
I was going to say.
I have that same experience. Yeah, I'm going to be with Steve in January, and it's great just to be training and enjoying. I know the feeling very well.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah,
I'm glad it's over.
Are you?
Well, winding down, I should say.
it's not over until I fly out. Tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right. We still have another trip to the airport. So.
Awesome. Well, we know that you guys have obviously been interviewed before. You have your own podcast. So we kind of wanted to maybe touch on some subjects that you haven't talked about as much. So the first thing, like I know that you guys have talked in the past about how you got into karate and all of that stuff and your kind of journey and your own training, but we would love to know the transition point of when you got into teaching. So I think that happens at different points for different people. So David, can you share with us like how far along in your karate journey did you begin teaching in some capacity and become a head instructor, that kind of thing?
Yeah, let's see, 1976. I started with Japan International, which was a Wado school actually, and they had an instructor's academy, and it was actually they had gotten it approved by the government to be, it was VA approved, and it was in Birmingham, but at the time I was training in New Orleans. And so when I caught wind of that, I asked them about it. And they said, well, you need to be a black belt. And, I'd been a black belt with a Mudokwan, but not under, Wado. I was kind of just getting started. I might have been 8Q or something, it wasn't far along. And but anyway, that's where about a year later, I went to the started the course, instructor's course, when I left New Orleans and came back to Alabama.
Gotcha. What was involved in that instructor's course? Is it similar to like the JKA style instructor's course? Or?
I couldn't really compare because I haven't done that one.
Sure.
But we had to be there in the morning. It was about a 6-hour day. We went in and we did basics during the morning. It was like a 2-hour basics to give us a break. And then, it's been a long time. I really hadn't thought about this.
Putting you on the spot here.
Somewhere along the lines, around then, we would go to lunch. But when we would come back, then we'd do things like anatomy, physiology, that sort of thing. And then, or business. It would, in other words, it'd be administrative in some way.
Oh, okay.
And then we'd close off with more training, the last 2 hours.
Gotcha. And this was like a weekend course every so often, or was this like a everyday
Full
kind
time.
of
Yeah,
okay.
That's why the VA approved it.
Oh, okay.
Because it was, if you were VA, and of course I had been, in the military, then they started me that way. But it was 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and then it was a 2-year course.
Gotcha.
Wow. Did you go straight away into opening a dojo after that, or
No.
no?
Actually, I ran for cover.
Oh no! Okay.
Yeah, I was not sold on the idea that I was qualified.
Okay.
I did not stay the whole 2 years there. I was there for a year, and then I bailed and moved down to South Alabama, Monroeville, Alabama.
Okay.
That's where the I don't know. I can't think of the name of the movie. Anyway, there's a famous movie that was done about that.
Okay.
And, but I moved down there, I was working, I used to weld, and that's why I was in New Orleans, I worked in the shipyard. But my father had been in the paper mill business, so, you know, contacts, that sort of thing,
Yeah.
There you go.
I was worked in.
Gotcha.
And, but anyway, I stayed down there for a year, so my karate training was real sporadic. Weekends, sometimes I'd come back to Birmingham and train. I didn't leave on a bad note, you know, I mean, I was still connected with the dojo, I just left the course.
Yeah.
And, but the big thing that happened to me was after I left Monroeville, came back to Birmingham, I got invited to go to Hawaii, which was the headquarters for Japan International.
Gotcha.
So I moved over there, and basically it was like finishing the course there, but it was a different setup.
Yeah.
Over there it was kind of OJT, you know, on the job training.
Yeah.
And then,
So you were expected
That-
to teach immediately in the course.
oh yeah, it was everything. You know, I was with other instructors in the beginning to kind of show me the ropes of what was expected, business meetings every morning and every evening. Yeah, it was big. But that's where I really got my push, and then I stuck with it from there, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
How about that?
So that was over like about a 4 or 5 year period.
Oh, okay.
How about
Gotcha.
that?
How many dojos have you operated or owned?
Well, ever since I've come back, I've owned my dojo.
You own just different locations?
Yeah, the most I've ever had at one time is 3.
Okay.
3 different locations. But they weren't, I had like 2 that were full-time and 1 where we were just kind of collecting. I mean, you know, it was smaller.
Gotcha. So Scott Sensei, same question. How did you transition from the training part into the instructing part?
Like fairly early on. So like I started in a small town, and I was like, it was a small club, right? So by the time I got like maybe 3rd Q when I was 16, and then I like around about 2nd Q maybe, my instructor, like normal thing, oh, just take those guys for like 5 minutes and go blah 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 blah.
Yep.
And so like from 16, 17 years old, I remember I was kind of teaching, and then it was July 1989. My instructor couldn't make it, and he was like, and he rang me, said, Scott, like I can't make it, take the class for me. And I think I was like 2nd Q. And then he had to do some work, and then he came in at the end of the class, and you know, at the time there was a tin that you put your money in, and blah blah blah, and that's how it worked. And at the end he went, all right, thanks very much. And he gave me £5 note. Thanks for teaching, and gave me that. And I went home to my mom and was like, I've just been paid for teaching. And she's like, oh, that's amazing. And she's like, well, she could keep that. And my mum's still got it framed on her wall.
Aww.
You walk into an entrance hall and there's a £5 note framed with the date, something July 1989, I can't remember the exact date. And so that was back then, you know. And then I got my black belt. I went to university, and when I was at university, I wasn't teaching at university, but I kind of got a couple of my senpai were teaching, but then I'd always at weekends go traveling with Kato Sensei, my instructor, and always I was either assisting, or more often than not he would split the class. Okay, Scott, you go take them, and I'll do this, and even big seminars, you know, we'd have special kind of black and brown belt training every 2 months, and I remember the first time I was like showdown, and maybe 19, and he said, okay, knee dans and below that side, sand dans and below, above that side, and so all the sand dans and like there was go dance, rocker dance, and he was like, Scott, teach them Hombu.
Oh.
Okay. And so I mean, like I was like very young, but like to their credit, they were like, okay, go on then, kid, show us what you got. And they were like, yeah, okay, fair enough. So like right from early on, I was doing that, and then I went to Japan, and in Japan, obviously I did the instructor course, and towards the latter end of the instructor course, I was teaching at the Hombu Dojo. I had my own class that I was teaching, And then from there, after graduating, I went to Ireland and opened up my full-time dojo. And so I've never had a job.
Okay, that's one way of looking at it.
Yeah, I mean, I've that's it. So I've never had a job, so I've only ever taught karate professional. I've only ever earned money. I mean, there's a few things that I've done, like when I was a kid and stuff, paper around and that. But as a full-time job, I've only ever done karate. So yeah, it goes back a long way. From 16, 17 years old.
Nice.
Yeah.
When you decided to do the Japan instructor's training course, was the idea, were you just furthering your training and expertise training-wise, or was it?
Yeah, so
I become a teacher, or was it both?
So I read. There was a famous martial arts magazine called Fighting Arts International, a magazine that was run by, published by Terry O'Neill, who from the KUGB fame in England. And I remember reading an article, an interview with Frank Brennan, who is one of the most famous European kind of karateka, and he said. I've never really had a job. I worked briefly in a grocer's shop when I was a kid, but very quickly I started competing, and then I became professional. I thought, that's amazing. That's what I want to do. And so I was always in my mind, how can I become professional at karate? And so I thought, going to Japan for a year, that would be good for my resume. So I'll go to Japan for a year, and it'll take my level from being a dojo instructor level to maybe a regional instructor level, and that might be enough to kind of put me into the edge where I could earn a living. Because nobody in England at the time, it's very different from the culture here where you'd have professional dojos. Nobody really in the time had a professional dojo in England. It was all hobby guys, and you certainly wouldn't have a building dedicated to karate, with the exceptions of like a Noida sensei who had his own dojo. That was just a way of pushing me over the edge, I thought. I mean, secretly, I always had the idea, I'd love to do the instructor's course. And it was a deep secret that you'd never tell anybody because you'd be ridiculed. Like, what? Like, don't be ridiculous. You're never able to do that. So I went to Japan with the idea of going for a year. And then I arrived in the July, and then in the November, Richard Amos said, do you want to do the instructor's course? And then all of a sudden, what? Yeah, okay, that's possible, is it? And okay, that's what I'm going to do. So I thought, okay, I'll do the instructor's course. And what got me through the instructor's course was the idea that if I do this, I will be able to move to Ireland. And I knew that nobody who'd graduated the instructor's course was resident in Ireland. It was kind of like a virgin territory, so to speak, or virgin market. So I thought, that means I'll be able to teach nationally. This will allow me to teach nationally. So I went from a dojo to regional. This is how I'm going to be regional. Okay, this is how I'm going to be national. And that just meant that I had a greater chance of earning a living. Right. And then obviously it led to more things, but that was my plan,
How about that?
So going to Ireland was an intentional choice by you because there wasn't any there.
So when I was at university, I repeatedly went to Ireland to teach. So I was part of the national team, and we trained quite regularly with the Irish national team, and a few guys liked me, liked my style, and so they invited me over. So every year I'd go over and teach kind of like different seminars around Ireland when I was at university. So, and of course being connected to Kato Sensei, and people would see me on seminars all the time. So, and I did a few gigs in England as well. So even then, not that I'd probably seen it at the time, but even then I was kind of like I was teaching internationally. Right. I was certainly teaching nationally and the occasional gig in Ireland. So yeah, even then I was kind of teaching beyond the regions. So yeah, and so like I had that connection to Ireland. And then when I knew that things had changed politically in Ireland and they were looking for someone to, come and help out, and I thought, okay, I can do that. And there's two places that I've really felt at home, and one is Tokyo and the other one is Dublin. So I when I first went to Tokyo, I was like, okay, I belong here. And when I first went to Dublin, I was like, oh yeah, I definitely belong here. Yeah. So that was my plan.
Definitely less competition in Dublin than in Tokyo.
For sure. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So maybe looking at the more practical side, like the actual getting into teaching and starting the dojo, we have our own experiences with running our own dojos and the difficulty of establishing a student base and all of that. how did you start that? Did you have a student base that followed you? Well, I'll start with you, David. That like from your, and like, was it set up for you through your instructor's course, or was this something you completely did on your own?
No, it was strictly on my own, because when I came back from Hawaii, I had 0 students.
Yeah.
In fact, I was so broke I had 0 money.
Okay.
My parents paid for my flight back. That's
Okay.
how broke I was. But what I did right away is when I came to Birmingham. I grew up south of here, but Birmingham was going to be the base. Anyway, we started on the northeast side of Birmingham. And so what I did is I started, mentioned this to Scott the other day. I used to sit out in front of grocery stores and drug stores and push the carts back in, but they would let us, as long as we weren't kind of bothering people. But we would have flyers made up, give them flyers, talking to them about our class. So that's how we kind of introduced ourselves. We'd wear gi, out in the parking lot, on the curb.
There you go.
And so, I couldn't waste time.
Yeah.
And so we found there was a recreation center.
Okay.
They had rooms, and they said it's $10 a class. So we started, of course, with like a class on Tuesday and Thursday nights. I'm not really sure about the days, but it was something like that. So we were looking at 2 days a week, for the month. And I said, and we can pay you at the end of the month? I do remember this. And the lady said, oh, sure. And I was like, whew, okay. Skated past that. But anyway, so that's kind of how it started. And by the end of the first month, we had about 25 students.
Wow.
And I was pushing.
Yeah.
And of course, I would encourage people to bring a friend or somebody, because, and that also makes training better too, if you've got somebody, that's with you. So, we would always tell them. But anyway, so that's how it got rolling. But the big thing that I did is I approached the school system.
Okay.
And so we started doing after-school activities. We found out that there was a whole connection with after-school programs, but each school at that time was in charge of their own. So we just found surrounding schools, and probably within 3 months, we had 3 or 4 schools that were connected with the dojo. So we would teach the kids at the school, but we also gave them permission to come to the recreation center.
Gotcha.
And that's how, so I'd say we probably had, I'll say 50 students by Thanksgiving, thereabouts. And so they just continued to grow.
Gotcha. So you're doing like 1 class a week at these 3 different schools?
Actually, no, we did 2 classes.
2 classes a week?
Yeah, there was 2 of us that actually came here to work together. And so at first we were working, we'd get 1 school for him, 1 school for me, like that. But then later we kind of split it up and just decided it was better if he taught for himself and I taught for myself.
Gotcha.
But we were teaching the same things. But anyway, yeah, I had I had a location in downtown Birmingham, and then I had a location on the outskirts. So Tuesday and Thursday I taught at one location, Monday and Wednesday I taught at the other location, and then at night, we'd meet up at the recreation center.
Oh, so you were able to do this during the daytime at the schools?
Right after school.
Right after school.
Well, yeah,
Okay,
we would
gotcha.
do it right after school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was the recreational classes, were they children involved, or was it more adults?
Both.
Both?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because when we started, we had nowhere else.
Okay.
So it was in the summertime when we started. So school wasn't going on. So we had to kind of wait for that to happen. And then, like after Labor Day, we went in and talked to them about that.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, but we used the schools to kind of feed the other program.
Gotcha.
So that's the system kind of used.
Gotcha. That makes sense. So Scott, kind of the same question. Did you have a group of students that inherited, or you just kind of
No.
Bootstrapped it.
Yeah, so again, I arrived in Dublin and I had no money either.
Yeah.
And I
There's a pattern here.
yeah, I mean, I got a credit card. I mean, it was like 2002 and like money was very easy and I just applied online and a couple of days later I got this brand new credit card with £4,000, $5,000-ish limit on it. And I had to make it before I ran out of money. And so I did. It was a bit touch and go at times, but I started off with 2 dojos, two hours, and well 3 hours. I got one adult class and then 2 adult classes in the kids class on a Wednesday and a Thursday, and that got me through to the that was like October 2002. Got me through to the Christmas, and then in the January I got like a couple more, and then I built it up and yeah, I just. I mean, it got very close to me having to think of, because I'm a qualified high school teacher, and so moving to Ireland, I was allowed to work as a high school teacher. I had to do a kind of change over my qualification, but it was like an administrative thing, and then I could just do temp work and get paid, I don't know, a couple $100 for a day's work, and I got like literally that close. Like the next day, I was gonna apply for it and start temping because I didn't have enough money. And I was opening one new dojo, and 35 people turned up.
Nice.
And I was like, oh, and like in that 1 hour, I paid for a month's rent.
Nice.
And I was like, okay. And so I cancelled the appointment.
Yeah.
To kind of to change over my qualification and never looked back. Ooh. And now we have a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did you get those initial students in?
So initially, I mean, it's changed over the years, but initially I got loads of flyers printed, and I walked the streets of Dublin, putting them through letterboxes, just flyers, and thousands and thousands and thousands, and because that's what I had, I had time. I didn't have any money, but I had time, so I just used to get up and out the door by 9 o'clock, and I didn't come back until 6. And I'd do like a couple of thousand flyers a day. Ooh. And it was heartbreaking, like horrible in the winter, snow and rain and abuse from people, putting this rubbish through my letterbox type thing. Yeah. All of that, but with the idea that if I don't do this for the rest of my life, I'm going to be stuck in a classroom. Mm-hmm. So get over that, do it.
But you kind of are, though. The rest of your life
but not that kind of classroom.
Not that type of classroom. Let me show you, it's very different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So, in the early days, what was probably one of the biggest mistakes you made? The both of you. So, like, if you look back at it and go, if I could change that one thing, one approach, what would it be?
You referring to the business?
The business, right? Yeah.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to be sure I was
building a dojo and building that business. Like, what was the one thing that you could look back and go, you know what? That if I'd have just left that alone, I'd probably be a little bit happier. I don't know, more successful or not, but maybe happier.
I was scared to ask for money.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was the biggest thing, and you basically have a choice. Either you got to do it yourself or you got to get somebody else to do it. Mm-hmm. And usually when you're small, you don't have much choice.
Yeah.
You just got to do it, or you got to find a way to get it done. Mm-hmm. There was nothing electronic when I started, so everything was either check or cash, Mm-hmm. And so I had to, I was more worried about losing the students if I was direct. And what I realized later is the more direct you are, the less likely they are to question what you're doing. Okay. And that was huge. Yeah. Once I figured that out, it only took me about 5 years to figure it out. But, because I was always getting new students in. I mean, that was the one place I just couldn't keep them. I mean, I'd keep the ones that were serious about their karate, but sometimes not convenient for a parent, right?
Yeah.
So as soon as something happens, the child says, well, can I just watch TV today? And then, then all of a sudden they quit showing up because little Johnny doesn't want to come anymore. Because he said he wanted to watch TV instead of karate. And I'm like, They all say that. I say that.
Yeah.
I don't want to teach today. And that was one of the things that I kind of learned too, is, so I learned to get better communication with the parents.
Yeah.
But also I learned how to talk with them better. And eventually, of course, it grew into something, more professional. But at the time, when it was me, I was pretty slow to come around.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I think communication is one of the foundations of professionalism anyhow. So, I mean, even
Yeah, I would say so.
regardless of,
Even that knowing your value, right?
Yeah.
Not being afraid to say
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
is
See,
what
that
I'm
was I had never really thought about it like that. And it was hearing other people talk about that was when that really struck me.
doing. Yeah. Makes sense. Scott?
I don't know. I don't really have many regrets, and so I'm just trying to rack my brain. What did I regret doing? I think I've always kind of approached business with the idea that I know nothing, and so I'm constantly kind of asking other people. And I've got, I right from the beginning, I got some really good students who were successful business people. So I'd always be asking, oh, well, what do you think about that? And what do you think about this? And just kind of bouncing ideas off. My wife as well was always great with different, bouncing ideas off things. And so I never kind of got myself into a position where I was making a decision that was maybe wrong. It was always pressure tested by other people. And then I was quite good at being pragmatic, and I'm quite good at change. So I'm never particularly invested in a certain way. If this way is working, great. If it's not working, I'm not invested enough for me to regret doing it that way. Oh, that's not working, let's do this, So I've always kind of taken that approach. I think that the one regret maybe is when I started employing people, to think that they had the same set of values as me, and also the same sense of what we were doing together, and the understanding that I was trying to be as fair as possible, and not quite getting how jealous people can be. I think just misunderstanding. I've misread quite a lot of people in my time. When others are going, why are you friends with that guy? Because he's just after this, that, and the other. Oh no, he's fine. He's great. He's a good guy. And they've obviously been proven right over the time as I've been screwed over by people. So maybe that. But having said that, I'd much rather kind of give people that chance, and it it fall through, or it doesn't work out, than to be guarded and to be going, oh no, I don't want to keep people at arm's length. I think that's more destructive. Yeah.
With that idea of making sure you're getting the right people around you, or the right people in the right seats, has that been better judgment of others, or better systems, or both?
Say that again. What do you mean?
Is it if you're wanting to get the right people around you and the right people in the right seats, is it have your systems improved, or is it your judgment of character, or both?
Maybe I've just become luckier. I don't know. I think I think with people you just never know. You never know, and you should give them. If someone says, I want a chance, we'll give them a chance, and if it works out, great. And if it doesn't work out, okay, no problem. But at least you gave them a chance. And I think recently I haven't been I haven't been screwed over recently, and I think that's much more because I think generally speaking people are good, and people always want to do the right thing. I think before recently, there's always been outside influence. There's always been someone else who maybe wants to create division, and that has created division within the dojo or with whatever. Whereas now there isn't. There isn't anyone on the outside, maybe senior to me or whatever, who is able to kind of wiggle in or kind of stick the knife in or kind of create some sort of trouble. So I think that maybe is an element of why it's been, or recently it's been okay. But never say never, I had a very frank conversation with the guys in my dojo, Ross, Rue, AJ and stuff. And because one of our very close friends, senior instructors, not part of the HDKI, but a different group, who had a right-hand man who was like a son to him for the last 35 years. Last year, all of a sudden, stuck the knife in, stole a load of students and created his own dojo just down the street.
Yeah.
And I was like talking to the guys like, if even he can do it, never say never.
Yeah.
So I was like, if there's anything that ever is starting to niggle at you, you think is a little bit unfair, you say it immediately and we'll deal with it. Because I never ever want to, like, how much is friendship worth? You want the profits of the business? Take it. I don't care.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me. Because if just money or prestige or ego gets in the way, take it. It doesn't matter, because there's far more things that are important. So we have a lot of frank conversations about that constantly, and looking at people and going, well, if it happened to them, it can definitely happen to us. So let's just kind of be honest about things,
Right.
So yeah, that's how we deal with it.
Yeah.
Kind of speaks to the way you manage your employees, right? You don't really look at them as just employees; they're friends,
For sure,
or your guys, your boys.
I mean, it's a very complex relationship, like say Ross, Rue, AJ, Caitlin, my 4 full-time instructors in the dojo. I am the friend, the karate instructor, the boss, maybe at times like a father figure or a big brother figure, the mentor, because I'm saying, in their development, like their careers are going to develop outside of the Hombu dojo. Hopefully not outside the HDKI, but certainly outside the Hombu dojo. So how can I mentor them to make them successful? It's a whole host of things going on that are constantly ebbing and flowing. And sometimes I'm the boss. Yeah,
You have to be. Right?
What you just did was blah blah blah. Never do that. Okay. Sometimes I'm a sensei. Most of the time I'm a friend. And you got to be a little bit. You got to allow yourself to be a little bit more amorphic in that. Like you're constantly ebbing and flowing within that relationship.
That's so contrary to what most management teachers or seminars teach you, is that you're not their friend. You're not their buddy. You're their manager. You're their boss. You have to play that role. At least in the States, as I experienced it, right? And to make it work that way seems unique. To speak volumes of who you are and the guys around you, right? Like that's very
well. I mean,
it's unheard of in the States, in a sense.
Well, and all those corporations are perfectly functioning, aren't they?
Right. Good point. Good point.
So yeah.
So the next question is obviously the opposite. What is that thing you did early on that you said, man, I hit the gold pot here. I got something here.
Me first.
Right.
Actually, it's probably exactly what we mentioned earlier, and that is putting a value on exactly what you're teaching.
Yeah.
Once I did that, I wasn't afraid to ask. We actually went to a contract system. I was without it for years. And, all the other karate places were using them, but I had resisted when I left Hawaii and came here. And, but what I did, I just, I decided all at one time. We had really lost a lot of students, and so I was in a pickle, so to speak. Anyway, we had about 50 students, and had a dojo, that I was paying rent for, all that. So all at one time, I raised the price of tuition, went to a 1-year contract, and I promised my people that were there, because at the time I think I was charging like $35 a month. This is mid-80s, okay? So I was charging about $35 a month. I had every single student that we had signed the contract for $35 a month. And I promised them, if you stay and never leave, I will never raise your tuition. So that became the rule of our policy. What you sign up for in the beginning is what you will always sign up for. So then you don't get this, well, we're going to be gone for the summer. We don't want to pay tuition. And so what I would do is say, if you drop your, you contract,
Yeah.
then when you come back, it's going to be $50 a month, or it's going to be, eventually we went to 60, and but that's how we handled that. So the contract actually protected them, and that's kind of the way I sold it. And it wasn't, and then when, of course, people would say, we don't want to sign a contract because we don't know how long he's going to stay. And at the time, I just said, come back when you're ready. When you feel like you want to, if you can make a commitment for a year, then come back. Later, I got a little brighter. So I started like a 2 or 3 month program where they had to pay cash up front. No contract, you just pay for the 3 months, then let them sign the contract at the end of the 3 months. So it kind of evolved, and that's where we kind of pushed and started making a move. And so basically that's what we did, and that's when the dojo really started growing. At one time, we were up to about 350 students.
Holy crap.
Good job, man.
Yeah, and but my collection system was not so good at that time.
Oh, okay.
And so it decreased, but we were well over 200 actively training in the dojo. So, but we probably had up to 300 training at one time, but our numbers never got any larger than that. That's why I really respect what he's done.
Yeah.
But still, and but that's that's where we went, and eventually we stopped it for other reasons. But I came off of the contracts probably maybe 2015, something like that.
Gotcha.
So we haven't used it since then. But then now we have electronic collections.
Right.
So that seems to work
Yeah.
just as well.
What was the question?
Yeah.
How what's the opposite? So what have I done? I think carried on training.
Okay.
I mean, although I agree with everything that David says, he just said, I've had the similar kind of evolution of the business, but making sure that the product is top notch. And so always, I very early on, from leaving Japan, realized that I needed around me some dedicated, good senior people that would train like what we do three mornings a week. And so from very early on, every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday morning, there would be the morning guys and women, men and women, and we train really hard, no teaching, no kind of faffing about, okay, Tuesdays this is the set menu, Wednesdays this is the set menu, Thursdays the set menu, and that's what we do. And making sure that we are, said before, the fittest, strongest in the room.
Nice.
Yeah.
So when you both have mentioned, you mentioned that you have obviously instructors that work for you full time. You obviously had help, David. Did you ever pay for other people to help instruct? At what point did you introduce that into your business model?
Well, when the growth really, kind of exploded, and I had a guy that seemed interested,
Okay.
and he was coming to even day classes. We had a noon class. This is after we had the dojo.
He was one of your students?
Yes. Oh, yes. I've never pulled. Well, one thing was because I was still teaching Wado at that time, and actually it was. You know what? That may not be right. It may have been when we were under Mikami Sensei,
Okay.
because I know he was with me when we were training with him. Or it could have been all kind of happened at the same time,
Yeah.
that era. It's, it kind of runs together, but I'm sorry. Anyway, this guy was pretty dedicated, and he was showing up the dojo a lot. He was probably training 3 or 4 nights a week, and then the 2 days that we had noon classes. So, he was in the dojo a lot, and it just kind of built up from there. And as he got motivated and pushed, then some of his friends were, wanting to jump on with him. And then we started setting up special classes. We had, by the time everything really started developing, we had a Saturday morning session. Saturdays were our biggest days.
Really?
Yeah. And it was like 6 o'clock we had instructors training. 7 o'clock we had black belt training only. And
AM.
yes.
I'm just gonna ask the same thing.
Yeah.
Woo, buddy.
6 a.m., 7 a.m., and then we had a meeting with all the black belts and instructors from 7 to 8. No, wait, 8 to 9. And then at 9, regular classes started. We usually just had 3 classes, beginner, intermediate, and advanced.
Gotcha. Not separated by age, but just separated by rank.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Okay.
I never separated by age until probably about 10, 15 years ago.
Okay. Did you find that transition to be helpful for the development of your students, or was it just a necessary?
Let me kind of qualify that statement.
Yeah.
We always kept satellite classes,
Yeah.
which were in the schools.
Uh-huh.
So that's where most of the kids were training.
Okay.
But once they got rank, like if they went through a school year and started to develop, the schools closed us down during the summer. So, and this was another good thing about when we started the contract thing, is that the parents, we didn't force the parents at the faraway schools, but the ones that were nearby, adjacent to the main dojo, then we would recruit them to come all summer long. And we just kind of were a little more flexible about that.
Yeah.
So they would come and start training. And once they started training at the main dojo a lot, then they typically wanted to stay there.
Yeah.
Some would go back to the schools, but a lot were, wanted to be in the dojo.
Nice.
So that was kind of how we kept feeding it.
Okay.
And that was another thing about the contract. We couldn't make them come in the summertime. So, we would just stop it at the end of May.
Gotcha.
So.
Right. So then Scott, same question. At what point did you start bringing in instructors to help you?
But basically from day one. So when I first moved over to Ireland, I was living with a lady who was a friend of mine from back in the day. She was a third dan at karate, and so she was a teacher of philosophy at the university, and so she'd have like a kind of a lot of free time basically, and so in that so I moved in the October of 2002. In the January of 2003, I had this massive influx of students, and so I'd also had students that were kind of training since the October and had maybe started to take tests and everything. So I started to have different ranks, and so it was always my policy. As soon as I got if I got close to 20 students, either I'd split the class or we'd have an assistant. Still to this day, we'd never have more than 20 students in a class with one instructor. And so I got to that point in the January of 2003, and so I said, hey, can you come and help me and I'll pay you? And she was like, yeah, great. So from that January, she assisted me in increasing number of classes as they got bigger. And then in the September of 2006, for a variety of reasons, we opened a full-time dojo, and it was the first full-time professional run dojo in Ireland, basically. And we had various different dojos, and I kind of consolidated them into one venue. And because it was a full-time venue, it meant that we had more opportunities to have different classes. And so then, by that point, there was a number of black belts that had started training with me. And one guy specifically, he was a taxi driver, but he had his own dojo, but he liked the idea of becoming full-time. So I could give him classes. Okay, let's open a class this time and this time. And so that's when I started to have kind of people teaching classes by themselves. Up until that, it'd only been really assistants.
Right.
And then that expanded, and then we after consolidating, after about 6 months, a year of consolidation into one venue, and that got busy, and then we started going back out to different areas and having satellite clubs. And that's when I started putting people in teaching, and so that kind of expanded, and now we have like 25 venues in the whole of Dublin.
Wow.
With 5 full-time instructors, 2 part-time instructors, full-time secretary. So it kind of, from that consolidation in 2006, slowly kind of got bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Have you ever run into issues? I mean, you guys obviously have your instructor just training 3 times a week.
Yeah.
And that I'm sure helps to kind of unify your thoughts, I guess, on how you're teaching. Do you ever have, I don't want to say issues, but are there ever times where the instructors that are working for you are maybe teaching something that you're like, it's a little questionable or whatever? Like, how do you kind of standardize the teaching?
There's no standardization of the karate.
Sure.
So like they're all good guys and men and women, and so obviously during instructors training, that kind of purifies the technique, and if they're doing something wrong in a technical sense, or something that's a bit off, then we'll be talking about that, and like they're not going to get the level of repetition out if they're doing something that's inefficient.
Yeah.
And if it's efficient for them, then it's work, then it's good. If it's inefficient, it's not good, then they're going to kind of suffer from it. So that kind of purifies their technique, in their individual technique, and then how they teach it, then they're encouraged to be kind of uniquely them.
Yeah.
But we have a teaching manual that I wrote years ago, which gives kind of basic classroom management. Like, so I'm a qualified teacher, so I know basic classroom management, how to kind of interact with kids and adults as well. I mean, adults are a little bit different. It's taught more thematically, but with kids, we have kind of like a basic guiding principles about how to manage them, how to reset their mind, reset their thinking, refresh their thinking, how we can teach through games, through different activities. And so they are kind of shown that and mentored and given feedback, and normally they develop quite quickly their own style with the foundation as being our kind of manual. Yeah. We don't really have much issues.
Right.
And occasionally Susanna, who's my secretary, she will get a phone call or an email, and we only really act upon it if there's a number of complaints. Like, mostly it's a disgruntled parent who, for whatever reason, had a bad day at the office. I'm going to show them type thing. And we've had and if it's a one-off, it's a one-off, and we don't mention it to the instructors. But then if there's a consistent pattern, then we'll have a conversation, and then we'll kind of make some inquiries and look, and then maybe I'll have to have a quiet word with one of the instructors. But I think that's maybe happened once in the last 20 years.
Nice.
Once or twice, yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
I mean, considering how much it seems like, at least in American schools, teachers are micromanaged to the nth degree. So it's nice that you have teachers that are able to handle themselves. But I think a lot of teachers really are capable of that. We just have a messed up system. But that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, I'm sure. Like, it's probably no different in high schools in Ireland. Maybe it's not as bad, but like certainly those issues exist. But with the karate, all the kids are actively wanting to go. Yeah. And they are having fun. And we have white belt class, like white belts, low grade colour belts, high grade colour belts, and they're kind of separated quite strictly. And so white belt kids, mostly fun and games, kind of low colour belt kids, proper karate with fun and games at the end. High grade kids, just karate. And so they understand where they are and what they're supposed to be doing, and they actively want to do it. So very rarely would we get people who are disgruntled.
Yeah.
So on a side note, because this is something that we run into a lot in our dojo, well, not a lot in our dojo, but it's an issue, right? The parents want the child to do karate because it instills self-defense or self-discipline and everything, but obviously the kid is not interested. Yeah. How do you handle that situation?
So we have, so like for example, if a white belt comes into the class, white belt class, there's say 20 kids, and straight away 4 teams of 5 in each team. And we have, the ninjas and the samurai and the shoguns and the mutant turtles, wherever it is, they choose their name. And then Yeah, we then create a team captain, and the team captain is the best person who can do Chokuzuki, for example. Okay, that's great Chokuzuki. Okay, you're team captain this week. Okay, and then you're going to keep score, and so each team has scores, and then we'll get teams like wave after wave of teams coming up and doing basics, and then bringing them round and go, okay, what's important about my geri? Oh, this is important. Okay, good, 2 points for your team, and blah blah blah. Teach them that way, and so they're actively into it and engaged. And we change where they're sitting in the dojo, where they're standing, just to refresh their thinking. Kind of refreshes them all the time, and so we're running it in that pattern, Kihon, Kumite, Kata, and they're all trying to build up points. And we're constantly, okay, how many points do you have? How much? They're in the, okay. So we're constantly trying to remind them of what they're trying to do, the points that they have, what position they are within the dojo rankings, so to speak, within that class. And then we're kind of taking that. Now, if there's any issues, little Johnny's speaking. Ninjas, little Johnny's speaking, -2 points.
It's pure pressure.
And it's self-regulated.
Nice.
What are you doing? You know, like they're doing this, and so you get peer control, and then so at the end we maybe have a game, and we always kind of try to coordinate it that it's kind of neck and neck, and so then basically the final game will decide who's going to win, and the winning team, they get to clean the dojo.
What?
We have the mats, the pads out, and they have to kind of run up and down. Yeah. With the dojo, so the wing team cleans the dojo. They love it.
Really?
Yeah.
It's so backwards.
Yeah. And the parents like, I don't know how you do it. That's genius.
Yes, that is genius.
But kids want to.
Yeah.
Kids love order. They love confinement. The world is chaos to them.
Yes.
You will take a kid down the street and they're like, everything's new and chaotic to them, you know.
Yeah.
And so if they come into an environment where they know their place. They know the rules. They understand if within the rules they can do this, that, and the other, and they can achieve and be special. And if they go outside the rules, then they will be ostracized. So first, if they break any of the rules, they get a warning, verbal warning. Second time they break the rules, 2 minutes on the sofa, and they come back in, all's forgiven. Third time they break the rules, 5 minutes on the sofa, they come back in. It's not all forgiven. You better behave yourself. Fourth time they break the rules, they're on the sofa for the rest of the class, and they're banned next week.
Woo.
And if they ever get banned twice, the second time they get banned, that's it. You're done. You never come back to karate. And in 20 years, I think 3 kids have banned for life.
Dang.
And that's how you handle. You create them wanting to be there. You make the atmosphere where they want to be there.
Yeah, and they're all happy. They go out smiling. Whether they've won or they've lost, they had a great time, and they've learned karate. And we get lots of floppy kids, like they don't know what they're doing, and it maybe takes a long time for them to grade. But some of those floppy kids turned out to be great black belts.
So that's a thing, because we deal with that. Like the kids are floppy, and I'm like, what is wrong with you?
Noodle.
I don't say that to them, but I'm thinking like,
Oh, of course.
I say it to them.
I tell you what, like
Don't be floppy.
What's wrong with you?
Historically, those kids that turn up and they're like, boom, straight away, they never get there.
Yeah. Right.
But the kids that are like, it's like big tall Ben. I don't know if you remember when they was at my dojo, but like big tall Ben, dangly kind of. He was little at the time, and I thought, like, God, will he ever quit? But like you're paying my mortgage.
Right, I do remember that because you said that to me.
Yeah.
Wow.
And now he's like probably one of the best fighters in Ireland.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean it's just like unbelievable. So you just never know. You never know, and I often think that the better you are at teaching, the lower the level of your students. Now, let me explain with that. So we have 700 students in my dojo, right? Now, most of them are kids, and most of them are terrible, but they still come back week after week after week, really enjoying karate. Now, they're not going to get promoted. It's not that we have half grades and we kind of encouraging them and everything, but like really from green belt and above, it's pass or fail. We never kind of like, oh, you kind of did okay, we'll give you half a grade karateka or like a stripe on the belt. Up until green belt, we'll kind of not encourage it, but just like a kid who's 5-6 years old, and you say you've got to wait a year before you're grading. Well, that's a fifth of their life.
Yeah.
It's probably half of their memorable life. So like you can't say that to them. So okay, you can grade in 6 months, and you're going to take half a grade, and then you can grade in another 6 months, and you can take another half grade. So they've gone up 1 Q in a year. And we do that, but by the time they get to green belt, they're probably 10 years old. If they start at 5, they could be 10 years old, 9-10 years old.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of like, it's pass or fail. I'm sorry, it's pass or fail. And normally by that point, they've seen so many other people fail, they're kind of like, yeah, okay, I failed. But you never quite know. And of course, by the time they get to brown belt, they're either there or they're not there. But by brown belt, they could have been training 10 years.
Yeah.
And so that kind of self regulates. It kind of like weeds them out. And the people who eventually kind of have some level of control, then when they take black belt, they're good. But you just never know. So the bigger the dojo, the lower the level, because you are good at teaching and keeping them enthused.
Right.
And then you never know out of those big enthusiastic group who will become good. Whereas like some guy's got 10 students and he's like, every one of my students are great. Yeah, but you only have 10. I have 700 students. I can guarantee 100 of them are brilliant.
Yeah.
600 are awful, but I've got 100 brilliant students. You've got 10 brilliant students. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how I look at it.
Yeah. More opportunity for people to be great there if you have more students coming through.
Yeah, that's right. It's usually a percentage anyway.
Yeah.
Right. That makes sense.
We used to have a thing where we called it the 20-60-20.
Yeah.
And 20% are going to be top level people. You coach them, they're going to make you look good.
Yeah.
The 60% in the center is really who you're working with.
Yeah.
You work with them, the people in front are pulling them forward, but there's 20% in the back that are just kind of dragging their heels.
Yeah.
And, and it's always going to be like that. What's interesting is that I have found, and this I think is what Sensei was saying here, you have a kid that's kind of floppy, and it's, this is their punch, and if you get that, but they're in the back of the they're in that bottom group, but if they persist, they'll move forward and they'll get into the 60%, but they'll make their way to the top of the 60% because that's where they're comfortable. And then if they move up into the top 20, they'll do it again. They'll move up to their comfort zone. They'll keep moving forward. So, unless they're just the bottom of the bottom, and it's here and there. But the idea is that, wherever they are, you just got to keep working with that middle group.
Yeah.
You can't hold their hands or do anything for them. But I always say that the top 20 floats our egos. And, for a lot of teachers. And it does. I mean, they do make you look good. And,
but they annoy you in the process, maybe.
But it's this to me, really who you're coaching is the 60%.
That middle group.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So, a little bit of a tangent. Are there principles of how you have run your dojo over the years, Scott, that you have extrapolated out into the HDKI, into your organization? Are there ideas that you have taken from the structure of running a dojo and you have applied it to the greater organization you built?
Yeah, I mean, like the HDKI is Hombu Dojo Karate just internationally.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's an extension of the dojo, and the membership within the HDKI are an extension of the membership of the Hombu Dojo. So all I wanted to do was literally take what I'd done in my dojo and send it out there, and give people the opportunity to be part of that and maybe be part of that community. So like in a very real way, that's exactly what I've tried to do.
Gotcha.
And those principles are. I often think so. Like British Special Forces is a little bit of a tangent, but British Special Forces, SAS and the SBS, fairly famous. They never use rank. It's like, all right, Bob, all right, Terry, how you doing, mate? You know, like it's not, then they could be a private, they could be a sergeant, they could be a lieutenant. It doesn't really matter. Like it's all first name, because they know that they don't need rank. They need to prove it daily. Like we are really, and they train really hard, and like 2/3 of the casualties within the SAS happen in training, not in the battlefield.
Whoa.
So they train really hard, right? So I think, not that I'm comparing my dojo to special forces,
Yeah.
but that sense of like, we don't have, my dojo is fairly informal.
Yeah.
Like we'll have a standing bow that we never do Cesar unless there's a visiting instructor. We'll never even do showmanry. It's just like me face us. Okay, let's get on with it.
Yeah.
And we train hard.
Yeah.
And for sure, they'll call me sensei when I'm teaching. But outside the dojo, off the dojo floor, some people do, some people don't. It's completely their choice. It's never insisted upon, and we don't have the trappings of that formality.
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking about this a little bit yesterday. We have the infrastructure of tradition, but we don't have the trappings of traditional formality,
Right.
which then frees you up to go, right, well, you can't hide behind those trappings. You have to be good.
Yes.
And you have to be good at a variety of things. It's not just how good you are at hitting or beating someone up. Some people are really respected because they're just really nice people and they're very nurturing and they take care of other people. Some people because they have sound advice about a whole host of things. Some people just through grit and determination. They're never going to be any good, but they are always there training hard.
Yeah.
So having that ability to see things that need to be respected within people other than just a good Girambarai, you know.
Yeah.
At the same time, try to have a good Girambarai. Yeah, like those kind of like principles we've tried to extrapolate out. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Now, there's other things as well, but like, yeah, that would be probably overarching the most important. Yeah.
So, we always end our podcast episodes by discussing what we're working on. So we'll start with Sean, and then we'll work our way around the table. We're gonna throw Sean under the bus. Sean, what are you working on?
First, oh man, I'm working on weight distribution in my stances and sort of my internal timing of when my pelvis starts to move forward or backwards, and when I start to engage my hip flexor or my glute, and trying to make that smooth and as efficient as possible. So I'm spending a lot of time just moving from back stance into front stance, or front stance into the middle of front stance, and then out like I totally have OCD, but I'd like to make it, you know, more fluid, more transitional, and sort of balancing the relaxation of your weight moving forward with the control of the technique, and everything sort of starting and ending at the same time. That's what I'm kind of honing in on.
Nice. So like positioning, control, timing, all of the many things layered on top of each other.
Yeah. With the most simple step that you can do. So.
And it's still difficult as it is.
Yeah, right.
Without adding other things.
Right.
David, what you working on?
This is technical things, right? Yeah.
Well, it
It's
doesn't have to be
whatever you're
technical.
working on. So whatever endeavorment you had for the last couple months, years, or whatever.
Mine usually goes through what the students are doing, and whatever I see that they're not doing well, I start working on.
Okay.
Because I know that there's an issue there. You know, there's an old saying that the fish stinks from the head down. So
That's so. I have those feelings too. Where if I watch some of my students and I see the mistakes that I make in their karate, I feel so guilty of it, and I'm like, I gotta work on that.
yeah,
Because
exactly.
they're imitating me,
Same
right?
thing.
At the beginning, they're imitating me. So I get it totally.
So a tendency of mine is to make sure that I'm connecting my lower body so that it's moving smoothly and the upper body's just kind of along for the ride. So that's one of the things that I'm constantly working on, because that's usually what I spot in them right away.
Gotcha. Okay.
Recently, I guess, So like for a while now, I've been kind of like thinking that my karate really exists between my little fingers and my big toes, and so like that connection between so your bottom two fingers has a different nerve ending. It kind of comes through your lat rather than your top two fingers, and so like that connection into my lat and down to my core and to my opposite big toe, and opposite, and so allowing both not only in kumite, it kind of like feels quite nice in kumite, but in Kihon and Kata as well, just dialing everything in to that one point from those 4 points of extremities, and then producing movement without any kind of real need to kind of overdrive with your muscles. So like I often think, I know if I say fascia, like Sean's probably rolled in his eyes going, it doesn't exist. But I'm a firm believer that well, of course, fascia, interconnected muscle tissue does exist, but that fascia system that is within the body, that is really heavily relied on within, especially Chinese martial arts, but I think Japanese as well. I really get a sense of moving from that rather than moving from the physicality of it all. And so like we were talking about today, about kind of like movement like that. So that's what I'm working on, and trying to make sure it's directly connected to my tanden, my center point. And the tweaking of my center is producing that movement. So I'm moving from the twitch of my core rather than the moving of my extremities.
Okay.
That's what I'm working on.
Yes.
Come back in about 20 years and I'll see.
Any other things you want to work on?
I figured we'd ask at the end.
Well, I can tell you about my lockdown project.
Oh, yes. I'd love to hear about your
So what I have worked on over the last two and a half years as well is a brand of dogi.
Nice.
So like I showed you guys today, that the only one that is in existence, it's Bokensha Dogi, which Bokensha means adventurer. And basically for the last 2.5 years, I've been working with a friend, student of mine, is in the manufacturing and designing clothes business, mostly high-end male shirts, trousers, stuff like that. And we've been working together with a company in China to try to get this kind of really nice material, and we did it. And so there's a large shipment of dogis heading from China to Dublin at the moment, and so it's called Bokensha. So probably the end of this month, all the websites and everything is ready to go live. It will go live, and we will be sending that.
Awesome.
So it's bokensha.com.
Nice. We'll put that in the description too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Congratulations. It's always nice to come close to the end of a project.
Yeah,
right?
it's we'll see. Yeah.
And we got to see it and feel it, guys, and it's a pretty nice product.
Yeah.
I was gonna say it does have a nice feel to it. Whatever that peach wash is.
Yeah.
It is amazing.
Whatever that was.
I can explain it all in nerdy detail at this point.
Oh, whatever.
Absolutely.
And Bokensha means adventurer.
Adventurer,
which
yeah.
goes right along with the karate adventure.
karate adventures, yeah.
Yes.
Hashtag karate adventures.
Everything makes sense now.
Awesome.
Right, Jeremiah, your turn.
So there's a couple things I'm working on right now. I'm trying to focus on being more center driven instead of shoulder, upper body driven. I have this bad habit of lifting my shoulders. Larger men that have been laborers all their lives, and they don't lift through their center. They're always just grabbing. And for the longest time, I thought controlling my shoulder was up and down movement, and then was pointed politely that it's also the forward back thing that you need to control also. So that's what I'm currently working on. What I'm investigating is leverage and techniques.
Okay.
Like, how do I create leverage in a knife hand block?
Yeah.
When I'm applying it, how do I create the feeling of strength and heaviness without moving my body or doing weird things with my body? How do I connect myself and make them feel like they're under pressure and I'm just standing there,
So you're saying Thursday night with the advanced strengths was a big experiment so that you could let them
absolutely.
try it.
Honestly, depending on who shows up for the Thursday night, the advanced classes, it is a lot of times an experiment because they're looking to find new ideas or new paths in their own karate. And we're talking about guys that have been doing karate for 50, 60 years. You're not going to teach them anything new. right? They've basically seen all of it. But to kind of work on something that's in your own creative mind and let them share their advice and the experience with them is really inspiring to them. So I do it. It's like I'm learning, they're enjoying themselves, win-win.
Yeah.
So
basically.
that's how I approach it. Is definitely the leverage thing right now. And I'm working mainly with backstance knife hand block.
Yeah.
Because it's so counterintuitive, right? It's like you're moving your weight away from them, but it should be strong. So how do you make it strong without
Pulling it back
doing
and-
that thing?
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's me. What about you?
Being a little rounder on the front has made it has actually.
So why are you rounder?
Yes, dear, because I'm pregnant. So because it's shown where there were already insufficiencies, like where I already had like maybe not the best pelvic control or the best upper body control. It's just accentuating that even more, which I think that's why Steve Sensei always says, like, if you have bad mechanics, try not to wear a weight vest because it'll make it worse. It won't make it any better. At this point, I can't really help that, but it's interesting at least to see, like, when trying to work on certain techniques, especially any stance transitions or rotations are just so much more difficult. And I catch myself in the middle of a class and like that really strong anterior tilt, and like I start to feel my back like locking up from the extra weight. But part of that is just because I can't control as well. But it's a nice reminder of what a more balanced pelvic position is supposed to feel like. So trying to memorize that while I can, and then whenever I'm back to normal training, seeing if I can maybe continue to work on that, without
Super
too much.
karate after delivery. I think.
Yes, yes.
Sure, that's
But
exactly what you'll
it's
feel
called-
like strict
it's
to the dojo.
It's called super compensation, where you have like this period of like recovery, and then you bounce back, and you're way better than you were when you started.
That's right.
Nerd concept there. Camera died, obviously. Sorry, guys. So we'll pop up some pictures on the screen. But thank you guys so much for your time for this weekend, for your insight and all
Thank
that
you.
stuff. So,
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you guys are awesome. All right.
Oh, thanks for coming.
Bye.
Bye.